Every decision that we make starts with either a push or a pull. For some of you, it might be a push of leaving your current situation. For others, it is a pull towards starting something new, towards going for the joy of that adventure. Whatever it is for you, I can promise you one thing. Based on my own experience, the business of setting up your own business is a very, very thrilling journey. And I would highly inspire and recommend any of you who have considered that as an option to follow it through and to give yourself the time and the support required to succeed in it. For sure, I had been inspired by reading the stories of Steve Jobs and Peter Thiel. For sure, some of these stories sound too amazing and you feel inspired to follow that path. But I must admit that my starting point was not these stories. Interestingly, at that point in my life, I had not come across any women entrepreneurs, nor had I come across the sort of persona that I bring, somebody who has corporate experience for almost 2 decades and then transitioned into finding a very successful business. So that was not my starting point. As I mentioned to you, my starting point was to have a portfolio career and a more balanced life. That was what drove me towards taking the plunge. But I did something that I would not recommend you do. I did not take a very good overview of the market. I just jumped into it with a lot of self-belief and conviction based on the feedback that I had received when I was inside corporates. This is a very risky path, and I suggest that nobody actually follows that path. It is by sheer luck that I, along those paths and fairly early in the path, came across the idea of a franchise business, and I bought into the franchise of a very successful large leadership training brand, which honestly today is the biggest reason for my cash flow. But this is not a given. We really need to be very aware of what are the various options available, and we need to take calculated risks. So as a part of that journey, I want to share with you in this video 5 different pretty big mistakes that I made, and I somehow learned a lot from them and I somehow survived them. But any of those individual mistakes could have led to creating a business that would not have survived. Let me share with you what these 5 are. Right in my first job in my early 20s, I was very attracted to become a trainer. So as I was a project lead or a program lead and buying into this amazing management professors and trainers, I would always insist as the buyer that instead of having 4 people in the team, they just bring 3 people and I will be the 4th person. And of course, since I was the buyer, they had to entertain my wishes. So I developed the skills of training and coaching fairly early in my career. As heading leadership development and talent management in various organizations, I also had the exposure on how these services are being provided to corporates by many different kinds of outfits. Some very small ones with just a couple of people, some large franchises, some business schools, etc. So I had a good view on the market. And even though I did not consciously analyze everything, I knew what would work and how I could position myself to sell these services when I left corporate. So here is a key question for you. What is a key skill set that you have developed over the years of working that you really feel very passionate about, that you believe will have some value on the open market? Did I mention to you that pretty soon after stepping out of corporate, I bought into an expensive business mentoring program? That program propounded that all of us can find our calling, and that if we really find that is what gives us utmost joy and we position it into the market, it's going to create a thriving business. I'm sorry to say that not too many people have really succeeded in moving from their passion to a successful business. So I would really warn you against those kind of inspirational stories. I would say identify a key skill set that you have honed and the sort of experience that you bring, because that is the solidity that will offer you market value. It does not matter if you go and get another education or another certification that I did. That is not what is important. Usually, the work that you have in the beginning is referral based, and you get good referrals when you are very good at what you do. Yes, marketing is important. Yes, selling is important. But the basic foundational work that you need to do is to have a skill set or a product that you can sell and that people will buy. So let me walk you through the 5 mistakes that I made that I suggest you don't. Number 1, I jumped into business without having a very clear idea of what are the different paths available. Also, I did have a skill set, but I did not test enough if this skill set is going to produce enough value and if I will be able to sell it enough. I suggest you don't do that. One of the safe ways of experimenting is to try and market your skill set as a part of a side hustle. Maybe in the beginning, begin with your family and your friends, but try to get some value out of that and really see if that helps you. Number 2, I actually moved out of corporate and started a master's education. And as I said, it did help me in one way, and that was to see the kind of roles that I would be getting into, right? So it helped me to shift my identity and it helped me to transition. However, the mistake was that it slowed down my progress of moving from corporate to founding my own business. If I had put all my energies right outside of corporate, instead of doing another master's degree and doing the thesis, etc., and feeling good about that, if I had put my energy in, really liberated it and put it into my business, I would have been further down the road. Number 3, I did not study the various business models that are possible when you start your own business. As I mentioned to you, it was by sheer luck that I took on a franchise business. But even in this franchise business, I am really sorry to say, but it is the truth, that I did not choose the right partner. And that is often a mistake that you will make. You will go and partner with somebody like I did, who has similar skills. I am a trainer and a master trainer. So I should not be actually partnering with yet another trainer or somebody who's enthusiastic about training. I should rather partner with somebody who has complementary skills, somebody who's extremely good at marketing and extremely good at sales, because that is what's going to help me to sustain my business. This is a mistake that I am suffering from to date. Number 4, I had no clue about something called as the cash flow quadrant. If you have never heard of this concept, it was a book written, I think, a couple of decades back by Robert Kiyosaki. I highly recommend that you read this book at the soonest, even when you're still in a job. It's very fascinating to imagine what a job looks like, what that movement from being an employee to being self-employed looks like. But as Kiyosaki says, actually, the part where you become self-employed or you're a specialist or you're a small business owner, it is actually far more tougher than even being an employee. You're continuously overwhelmed. You're always thinking about doing your work and marketing your work, and that makes your life really difficult. Kiyosaki suggests that we should move ourselves out of the small business phase or the S phase to becoming B or business owner, and maybe even I or investor. What is a business owner, a real business owner? How does it look different than being a specialist or a small business owner? I think a real business owner has identified the systems, the marketing that is required, the legalities that are required, and most importantly, the business model. They have a very clear understanding of what is the key skill set or product that they want to sell, and what are the skills that they need to acquire. Maybe it is around accounting, maybe administrative help, etc. But how are they going to pay for this so that they can focus on what is it that they do best? And also, over time, a true business is something that runs without you. So in my coaching and training work, today, what I do is a lot of small business work, though I must admit I have now moved more towards creating systems and processes, and I am on that path of having a business that can run without me. The last step is to be an investor, where you actually invest in other businesses and you make passive income. And I'm taking some baby steps around it. Now, I started my own business without knowing any of this, but I can definitely say studying this, understanding this, not intuitively like I had, but very categorically, and if possible in your bones, that is going to help you from making some key blunders as you go on your entrepreneurship journey. Fifth, clarity on what is it that you are looking for. As I mentioned to you, my objective was to have a portfolio career. Yours may not be, because as you know, I spend a lot of my time doing my nonprofit ventures because that's what gives me joy, satisfaction, and meaning. And maybe that's the case with you, but maybe it is not. Identify really how what you do balances also your business. So for example, my nonprofit work creates some kind of a leadership brand for me, which has become very strong. I also get referred a lot through that work. So in a very circuitous fashion, it actually supports my commercial venture. I did not create the nonprofit to support my commercial venture, but it is a great complement because both of them are in a similar space around leadership development, female empowerment, women leadership development, and so on. So think about it. How are you going to distribute your time, even when you're not doing your commercially oriented work? How can it still support your commercial work? Last but not the least is this dilemma of B2B versus B2C. So business to business versus business to consumer. And I must say to date, I struggle from this dilemma because my nonprofit is in the business to consumer space and most of my commercial work is in the B2B space. That is where I have my networks. That is how I have developed my brand. And I actually sell my trainings to organizations. I must say I'm always tempted to create commercial ventures which are more in the B2C space. But I have realized that if I need to do that, I need to give myself again a time frame of 3 to 5 years. And there are only so many new things that you can start at a particular time. So for now, I have made my peace by staying into the B2B space. But have that clarity in your mind so that you do not go to and fro because that really leaks a lot of energy. Before I finish this video, I would like to share one thought with you, and that is have some sort of a mindfulness meditation practice. It may not be necessarily meditation, but some sort of a mindfulness practice. For me recently, probably in a year or so after the pandemic started, this practice is writing. It is really, really helping me a lot to settle myself. Just to give you an analogy, do you know about the snow globe that children love to have? When you shake that snow globe and the snow is all over, that's how your mind is. It is all over the place. We are so busy with whatever we are trying to do, both in business and in life, and especially also our family considerations. So writing is the time that I really sit down and let things settle. It's really the quiet time that I take for myself so that I can reconnect to what is it that means something to me, that is something that is important to me, and that is something that is aligned with me. To share with you a recent example, I actually stopped a B2C commercial venture because of this particular practice that I have engaged myself into. As I mentioned to you, I was realizing that I don't have any of this richness of the portfolio that I'm trying to create in my life. I was becoming very single focused on that particular venture. I was losing the spirit, and I also lost a sense of play, which is really very important to me. And I realized that in many of my other ventures, I have this whole sense of play and experimenting and doing things for fun and not always orientated towards a commercial outcome. You need to find out what is your definition of what success looks like. What is the kind of life that you want to lead? And then align through this practice what you're doing on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis to that way of living. Thank you very much for your patience with this as I have shared with you some of my ideas. I know there are plenty of other questions that you have asked of me as I have surveyed and spoken to hundreds of you over the last couple of months. You want to know whether it's good to be a freelancer or start your own business. You want to know whether it is very easy for you to communicate to your partner and to your family. How do you negotiate an exit from your employer? Where do you find role models? Is it better to hire a business mentor or a coach? And what do you do with all those doubts that you will invariably be facing? I only have one simple response to all of these questions, and that is it really depends on what is it that you want from your life. If you would like me to accompany you, to support you in any of these questions that you are debating with, I'm very happy to do that for you. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn or write to me on shivangi@leadingislearning.co, and I will be happy to take on that conversation. Thank you, and I hope that my learnings and my journey have been useful for you to start your journey.